Welcome to our interview series on brave feminine leadership. I'm very excited today to introduce Kate Dillon. Hello, Kate.
Hi, how are you?
I'm very well. Kate, let me just step through very briefly a little bit about you, and then we'll get right into this conversation. So for our listeners, Kate Dillon is the founder and creative director of luxury work handbag e-tailer She Lion Bags. Kate is also the National Transformation Lawyer at Gilbert and Tobin. Kate's very serious and intentional about her portfolio career and divides her time between legal and entrepreneurial pursuits, and is anchored by a belief that in today's business environment, success and leadership is only limited by your imagination. Kate recently pivoted She Lion, and I'd love to explore some of that when we get into the conversation. But firstly, welcome.
Thank you.
And to the audience, for anyone who hasn't come across you before, Kate, I would just love us to jump right into your journey and to tell us about why you are who you are.
Gosh, that's a big question. Why I am who I am. I suppose I should probably tell you I am a self-proclaimed extrovert, and I'm absolutely a closet creative lawyer, as most lawyers are, unsurprisingly, maybe surprisingly for people who aren't lawyers, but most lawyers have some incredible creative skills that they're hiding under their desk or wherever. So I think, and I didn't ever aspire to be a lawyer, I must say. I was a very, very keen, dramatic thespian person, going all through VCE, and it was very much my parents that encouraged me to look at law as something that was, equivalent to acting. I don't know that it actually is, but having said that, I did do a drama major in my arts degree with my legal degree, and completing a legal degree was absolutely a fantastic thing to do. Not exactly like being an actor, but still fantastic. All the public speaking side of it is fantastic.
Absolutely.
And then I think through that journey, I've always loved exploring things like fashion, because it was another creative outlet. Pulling pieces together and looks together was always something that energized me and made me feel great. And when I was on exchange during law school, I met someone who told me about fashion law, which was a thing in New York. And I thought, oh my God, this is what I need to do. So came back and studied for the bar exam to go and be qualified in America. And it was 220 hours of online lectures.
Wow.
And like they send you these textbooks and past exams that honestly came and they were taller than me, like phone book, like yellow phone book style books of past exams. And you like hide in a room for like 4 months. My poor husband, who was just my boyfriend at the time, would bring me Slurpees and things as I was studying in the front room of my parents' house a very long time ago. And it was like the year before I started work as an article clerk. That gives away my age, because you don't call junior lawyers article clerks anymore. And I remember waiting. So I did all the study, and then I flew over to America to do the exam. And actually, it's over 2 days. And I think you do 6 hours the first day and 6 hours the second day from memory. It was very long. And there's somebody pulled the fire alarm in the hotel we were staying, so they evacuated everybody at 3 a.m. Between the two exams. Wow. And apparently it happens most years because it's a psych tactic to freak people out. Oh. Yeah, and there were so many people that were having panic attacks in the room and everything, like very hectic. But anyway, it was the best thing I think I've ever done, the experience anyway. And coming back, I'd obviously told everybody, because, passing the bar exam is like a big ego thing, I'm a New York attorney type thing. And so I was sitting there on the day that you get the results, like refreshing the computer screen, waiting for that to come through. And I failed. Oh my God. That when your stomach just drops out of your body and you're just like, oh, I have told so many people, and everybody is just expecting this to go well, and oh my goodness, I just want the floor to like swallow me up and like take me away. And so very upset. I, told my family and told my then boyfriend, husband now. And my mother very matter of factly said, yeah, that's disappointing, Kate, but just do it again. And I was like, okay. And so that's what happened. And I think that's been a massive part of what shaped me today. I think that's that suffering that very public failure, and then that complete fire in my belly to make sure that I pass the next time. And then the sheer determination to get up before work and study, and then go to work full time, and then study after work, obviously having an incredibly supportive partner and family around me, and firm, dogged to passing the next time. And I did.
So the first time, Kate, you didn't miss out by much, did you?
Well, I think it was, I always say it was 1%, but I actually was thinking about it. It was 0.1% because you needed 665 to pass and I got 655. So it was 10 marks off what you needed. And you needed to get effectively a 65% on each of the 32 subjects. So it wasn't like an average high credit. It was like on each one. And yeah, so essentially I think it was nerves, because 10 marks is nothing. It's 0.01%. Yeah. And then so that made it worse, obviously. But then doing it the second time, I passed by a long way. But I feel like having had that experience now, I've done the public failure thing. I know what to expect, and now I'm happy to embrace that feeling again. So I'm much more open to leaning into fear and taking risks, much more so than I would have been prior to that, because I've walked that unintentionally, but I have absolutely felt that viscerally, that I feel like that was a huge gift.
Is that your mum? Like, is that?
Yeah, it's both mum and dad, but it's my grandfather's mantra that he used to say all the time. Anything's possible with a bit of guts and determination. And I don't think there's anything more true than that, than living that experience. And I feel like that's like ingrained in my values from the way my parents have brought me up, to the fact that, my mother very empathetically but matter-of-factly turned around and said, yes, it's disappointing, just do it again.
Without knowing your mother, I can kind of picture that. So
yeah, well, she's the most loving, wonderful, maternal person ever, but she's also, very business savvy, powerhouse, strong, resilient, amazing role model of a mother as well.
Obviously also loves Law and Order. I'm just looking for where the drama.
Yeah. My father actually flew over with me to New York the first time I did the bar as support, like to cook meals for me, which was so lovely. And he religiously watched Law and Order while we were there. And I'm like, it's really not the same, Dad. But anyway.
So did you ever look back towards acting, as that was obviously a real passion for you at a certain point?
It was. I even did a NIDA. I even tried out for NIDA at one point and completely ruined a Scottish accent that I was trying to do in the solo piece.
So you want another go now?
I know. The thing was that you couldn't postpone, you couldn't put your law degree on hold for more than 3 years, and NIDA was 3 years. So it was kind of like, oh, well, I think I'll just finish this first and then maybe I'll go back. And then I kind of got carried away with the fashion law piece, and then swept up into the whole articles and doing a master's, because understanding the fashion law piece, I went over and met the head of Fordham University Fashion Law Masters, Susan Scarfidi, who is this amazing woman who is like, the head attorney on all those spectacular New York cases that are mainly IP, like Louboutin with like the color trademark and so many other amazing cases. Anyway, she was the head of fashion law. And so I wanted to go and meet with her and find out, how I could get into this, because you have to basically do a master's in America to specialize.
Wow.
And had gone over there. It was GFC time anyway when we went. So we were sort of had our backs against the wall anyway. But I'd encouraged my husband that it was very important that I buy this very expensive pair of hunter boots, because they were, all the rage at the moment. I had to look on trend when I was meeting this woman who was head of fashion law. And it was torrential rain in New York at the time. And I remember going to meet her. I would have looked like a drowned rat, but I did have my hunter boots on. And she greeted me, and I was just like, oh my gosh, she was like head to toe in couture, like matching everything, a spectacular tailored suit that had like bits that came off and like fishnets with multiple layers of stockings that looked super cool and knee-high lace-up boots. So I was just like, oh my God, I'm going to throw my hunter boots out the window. This is just ridiculous. I had wet hair everywhere. I'm like, I want to do fashion law.
So the advice is not to turn up to an interview in your hunter gumboots.
Probably not. No, probably not. And probably buy one of those massive golf umbrellas too, because a standard umbrella just doesn't cut it with the rain in New York.
So what happened there then?
She was the most beautiful woman too. So many women have lifted me up in my journey. But she was really frank and said, it's GFC. International is like first people out at the moment. It's not the right time to pursue this. You have to live here to do this course. It's a couple of $100K American to do. You can't do it by correspondence. If I was you, I would go back to Australia and do a master's in IP, and then come back once the GFC recovers and talk to me then, because a master's in IP is very similar. And so that's what I did. I came home and started doing a master's at Melbourne, and actually did a master's in commercial law because I wanted to have one subject in construction because my husband's a builder, but all the rest are in IP. Okay. And moved from a financial services corporate team into an IP team once I had finished the master's. And then having worked there for a few years, realised that I probably actually wanted to start my own fashion business rather than just do law for fashion clients. And so stepped out in, I think it was September 2014, and left. Scary thing to do. I mean, on an eyelash, not like, it was really like a scary thing to do. And started Sheline because I had seen this opportunity. It was a creative outlet I wanted to explore. It was something that my husband supported. And I spent the sort of back end of 2014 doing all of the courses at RMIT and night school in clutch bag, gusset bag, tote bag, handbag construction, leather appreciation, actually doing the pattern making, understanding all of the processes behind it, and then doing all of the Illustrator and Photoshop courses 3 times. First time to learn the skills, and the second and third time to network like a crazy, strange, creepy person, because everybody in there was someone from a big brand that was trying to upskill their expertise to a digital level, and they were willing to share where I should go to source leather and who I would get involved to make sure things were ethical and responsible, and which different countries specialized in which different types of techniques, and who were the logistics providers that dealt with really small businesses, and what was a reasonable price to pay for X or Y, and what's the ethics around negotiating on this point, and do you do that in Australia, and do you do that overseas, and should I work with people in Turkey or Italy or China or Romania or all these places I had no idea specialized in these different areas, and where do you buy zips from, and where do you get things tested? I mean, all these questions that you don't know what you don't know when you step into a new space. And I think that is absolutely a gift and a threat at the same time. It's the gift because you bring that beginner's mindset. So you absolutely ask the questions that the people that live in that space don't ask and don't think about, because it's not fresh to them. So you bring a really fresh perspective, which I think was lucky for me, because I think people found it endearing that I would ask these questions that were so off the wall because I wasn't formally trained in any of these areas and I didn't know what was the right way to behave from an industry perspective. I would just flat out ask. And then having had a law background, I was quite direct. I mean, I like to think of myself as a very friendly person, but I think the feedback has been that I'm like quite direct with what I ask. And yeah, I mean, sometimes people would just be like, who do you think you are? But other times they were like, oh, that's hilarious that you're asking that. Yes, you know, have you thought of this? Have you thought of that? And I think throughout the process, and also with this new project I've been working on, I just can't explain the magic behind people who barely know you going out of their way to help you if you're willing to say, I don't know the answer and I'd really appreciate your help. And there's some people that, I mean, I've formed, you know, really strong friendships with these people after the fact, but people that I are a very loose acquaintance or someone that I've possibly never met that I've cold called, have done things that have just changed the whole course of the business, saved me huge amounts of money, given me insight into ways to conduct myself that have changed outcomes.
I want to get right into that. There's so many things. There's so many things that I think anyone in any industry or role can take out in terms of their way of approaching networking or any kind of situation. And, you know, one of the things that I'm not surprised at all to hear you say is how generous people are when you ask. Most people, I think, are really, really prepared to go out of their way and help. Kate, can I take you back then? So you and I could probably talk handbags all day because I love a good handbag, and Sheline bags are lovely. So go and have a look at them if you're not aware of them. But at a certain point, you stepped out to start Sheline, but then went back in to kind of, you know, with a balance between the two. Tell us about that.
So I stepped out completely because I really wanted to understand the nuts and bolts of what I was doing. I think that's the legal training behind, and the fact that I'm always wanting to know the how and the why rather than just the what. And I didn't feel comfortable being quite that vulnerable, just outsourcing everything. I wanted to be able to talk with some level of sophistication about what I wanted, and also not be taken advantage of because I needed to know what it is I needed and didn't need. Yeah. But yeah, with any startup, you know, you're not going to make any money to begin with. And yeah, I needed to contribute, I think, as well. So 6 months into really networking and trying to pull the business together that hadn't launched yet, there was this role that popped up at Gilbert and Tobin that was a maternity cover position that was for drafting boilerplates and like contract law kind of specialist role in the knowledge team that was a flexible arrangement on 3 days a week. And I thought, oh, you know, that's pretty good. You know, it was, you know, great pay and 3 days in a law firm, in a fabulous law firm that's very prestigious. I mean, you know, that's okay. I didn't have any children at that point. And so I was sort of doing 3 days on the business and 3 days in the firm. And, you know, much like anybody who knows, you know, when you run your own business, you don't really stop doing your business and you're always thinking about your business. But yeah, that was fabulous. And that very organically turned into this, well, as I'm sure you're getting the vibe from if you're listening to this, I am very much, I draw energy from other people, and I draw energy from having conversations and connecting. And I was not that person in the corner drafting the boilerplates. I was absolutely walking around and talking to people and writing firm-wide updates about things, and then connecting people and saying, oh, you know, so-and-so is working on this. Did you know that? Because you could probably leverage that with what you're doing. And, oh, is that really irritating you, that process? Gosh, because there's actually this app that does that you should look into, because that'll save you time. And then that's very organically turned into this sort of connector role where I was moved into more of an innovation space and called an innovation lawyer, and then called an innovation strategy lawyer. And then all of a sudden we started growing an innovation team. And then I was a national transformation lawyer. And then we started having people that were lawyers and non-lawyers involved in this team that had grown from just a knowledge space, because knowledge lawyers act like that anyway if they're, you know, social and want to engage with the lawyers, which most of them are. Yeah, so that was just a very natural progression. And then I think the two were mutually reinforcing, because the ability to be able to connect more with lawyers, because you're sort of operating on an in-house counsel type basis where you're receiving queries from lawyers to help find examples on the system that are relevant to them quickly, or to advise on whether or not they know you're aware of other people working on similar things, or that have certain expertise, or that they can go and talk to about things. But then it turned into also advising clients on this critical thinking and process improvement and business design piece that's like I'm really passionate about, which so much of it is been where Sheline has come from, because not only is it the fashion piece that I really wanted, and the creativity and the design and the playing with all the handbags and the different leathers and textures and finishes, but it's also about understanding a need that needs to, or a problem that needs to be solved, and coming up with a solution that meets that need, and making sure that you do have the right problem, and then you have the right solution that is meeting that user's problem, and adapting that, and being aware that things change, and things have a shelf life, and of always putting out different fires when you're running a business, because it's just constantly problem solving. And I think I am a bit addicted to that feeling when you find the solution to something, or you help someone else come to a solution, and you see them have that aha moment. That's beautiful. So,
hey, you have always continued to invest in yourself. I know you've done a lot of different study from time to time, and I want to ask you about one of them in particular, but it's just interesting. I spoke the other day to Tony Johnson, who was the CEO of EY until recently, and he was given advice early in his career that said, update your CV every 6 months. And really what that was about was making sure you were learning a new skill every 6 months. Have you been intentional about that, or what?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think you should update your CV every week. Because particularly as a woman, you do so many projects, you do so many things, and you often have so many other things on in the background that you don't remember all of the projects that you've run, put together, the wins. So it's almost like you should have a to-do list that is essentially your list of wins that you've achieved that month, so that you make sure that you are capturing all that amazing goodness on your CV. Because when it comes to the time when you actually have to update your CV, you can't remember any of those things that you've done. And for sure, as God made little apples, there will be a million things that you have done that are fantastic. Okay. And to be able to have just a tally of things that you're working on that you're proud of, that you don't necessarily have to add to your CV, but that you can visualize and see and build on, I think is great for building your own ability to be able to talk about what you've done in a confident way that doesn't feel bolshy, that doesn't feel arrogant, that is just matter of fact, and I'm proud that I've done that, but also helps you capture that into your CV. But yes, I absolutely love learning. I think the process of learning is something that I really enjoy, and I'm a very curious person, and I feel like the more you know, the more you don't know, and I think that just drives the need to want to learn more.
So if we move our conversation then into women in leadership, and your experiences as a female navigating your career. I wanted to kick off by asking you, you've been incredibly lucky to complete the executive program in women's leadership at Stanford.
Yes. Yeah, that was amazing.
And I was going to do it last year before COVID started. So tell me all about it. Tell me, what do you think were kind of the key, maybe 3 things that you took away from doing that program?
Whoa, I don't know that I could just give you 3. There was just so many amazing things that came out of that program. There were all these really practical skills about navigating power dynamics that nobody teaches you in any setting, really. There were all these skills around the different way men and women communicate and how to leverage those things and how to navigate with and communicate with power and with purpose, and to hold that and feel comfortable in that. There were so many gems about different leadership styles and you being able to find one that suits you and feels authentic to you, and only being able to really reach your potential when you feel that it's authentic and that it is who you are. And so there was a lot of work on all of the participants actually, you know, getting to know who they were if they didn't already feel comfortable with who they were as well. It was the most amazing course. I would highly recommend you doing it as soon as you're able to travel to California. Yeah, Maggie.
I did do, so Berkeley have one as well.
Yes.
And in this series, the professor at Berkeley who coordinates that is actually joining us. So I'll be interviewing her. It was also fabulous.
Yes.
But I'd love to do the Stanford one,
Yes.
you know, in person as well. So let's come to your career then. So there's a point where you're at Gilbert and Tobin, you're doing 3 days a week there, and then you've got time outside focused on your own business that you're growing. People assumed that you were doing something else at the time though, right?
Yes, yeah. So as soon as you say that you work part-time, and I should caveat that I have a wonderful coach actually who is male, and he said you should never ever say you work part-time. You don't work part-time, Kate, you work 0.6, you work flexibly. And you don't tell anyone you work part-time, because as soon as you say you work and you don't work part-time, you work 2 jobs, but as soon as you say you work part-time, people will assume that you have children, or that you've got maternal duties, or that you don't take or you run the risk of people assuming that you don't take your career seriously, that you've got, you know, your mindset somewhere else, which I thought was really interesting at the time that he said that to me. But gosh, it has been powerful, because you do have people flippantly say, oh, yes, you know, she works part-time just in knowledge originally. And it didn't bother me to begin with, because I was like, oh, you know, this is just some money coming in because I want to be able to build my business. And then as it morphed into this more, I'm really passionate about change and transformation and creating value and improving processes and connecting people, and this sort of innovation space, such a buzzword now, that why can't you be respected as a woman working on a flexible arrangement? And why can't you have leadership potential and partnership potential on a 0.6? And why can there not be job sharing in this sort of position? And surely it's all around communication and being able to share the role and cover the full-time capacity. Like what is the obstacle to that? Like why? And then having boundaries, like why can't I run a successful business on a lean model, and then also be respected and have aspirations to be a leader in my 0.6 arrangement? And I think that's where the fire grew again. And yeah, I've become really passionate about proving that that's possible. I think a big part of that is about working for a firm that is progressive and willing to support you in that, but also about you advocating for what you want and making people aware of what you want to achieve, so that they can help put the steps in place to get you there, because people can't read your mind, and you know it's a no until you've asked. So yeah.
Brilliant advice. I would love your perspective, and you might be able to comment more on the law than other areas. But, another thing I'm curious about, and it seems to be a problem that we haven't yet sort of cracked the solution to. But if I look at the ASX 200 as an example, there's a lot of focus on women in leadership roles. At the board level, we've cracked over the 30%, which was a target that was set some time ago. So that's some reason to celebrate. There's been movement there. But at the executive level, there really hasn't been movement. And, in the last 2 years, 50 CEO appointments, 3 of them were female, 3 or 6, small number regardless. What's going on? Why are we not seeing, from your perspective or point of view, why are we not seeing more movement?
I think from my perspective, at least, that time period where you become the senior person, or you sort of start that level of mastery in wherever area you are in whichever business, often coincides with a time when you're also thinking about family. Whether that is just finding a life partner because you've been so career focused, there hasn't been the opportunity to find that life partner, and or you found a life partner, but you haven't had any opportunity to think about having children, and all of a sudden you're worried that it's going to pass you by. And so you've got to sort of get cracking, so to speak, if that's what's on your agenda. And there seems to be almost a penalty for doing that. There isn't really nobody holds space at the moment. Well, very few companies hold space for women to be able to properly step out and have children if that's what they want to do, and then re-enter in a way that supports them in that lifestyle for that time period until the children go to school. And I think a lot of people find that, a lot of women, I mean, I can't talk for everybody, and I'm definitely not talking for all businesses, because I know there are some that are incredibly supportive, but it's very difficult to juggle small children at home and like a high-powered career, definitely not on 5 days a week for most people, which is usually what's expected at an executive level, to be able to be there for your children and be there for your role or your team, is difficult juggle. And there's that expectation that women should have it all type thing, or women can do it all. And I don't think it's reasonable. I think we can have it all at different times. But if we're going to have it all at once, then there needs to be some give and take from the employer as well. That's why so many women seem to step out at this stage and start their own businesses and create the flexibility and profitable businesses in these amazing business models that are very different to what's out there in the norm, that suit them and their family and their lifestyle. And then they can step back into, a traditional executive CEO or corporate flying career again once they have some more flexibility. But when children are older, or maybe not, because it's, I mean, I only have little children at the moment. I have not experienced older children. I understand it's quite involved again when they're in teenagehood. But I don't think we've worked it out properly yet. I think there are some amazing women in senior positions that are advocating for it, but I think there are a lot of minds that need to change. And I think we've come a really long way in the last sort of 50 years, but I think we've got still a long way to go. And there needs to be a lot more focus on equality, and there needs to be a lot more focus on there being no penalty for stepping out to have a child, if that's the case, or just stepping out to have a break, or whatever it may be, because not everybody wants to have children. But I think more awareness around life choices, particularly those that affect women, and not being penalised for that. Because where do people think men come from? I mean, they were all born as well. And I don't know. I'm a bit fiery about it. Probably not podcast appropriate.
Not at all. But,
yeah.
What I wanted to ask was, people will watch this, and you're a self-proclaimed extrovert. You've got this wonderful motto in your family background about anything's achievable with guts and determination and that sort of stuff. Do you have moments of self-doubt?
All the time. Yeah, all the time. Massive imposter syndrome often. Yeah, all the time. And half the time it's about I think you have to feel that and acknowledge it and then push through it. And it's like, feel it till you become it. I think it's like those power poses that Amy Cuddy talks about. I use them all the time. And that's why I think feel it till you become it is the thing, rather than fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
Or because like a 3-minute power pose automatically lets your body physiologically create more testosterone, that creates more confidence, and scientifically will help you feel more powerful and perform better. And I think channeling that into an imposter syndrome situation, because most of the time you can absolutely do whatever it is that you think that you can't. It's about showing up and feeling like tricking your body into feeling like that you can do it, and saying no to that voice that is saying, oh, well, you haven't been working for a year and a half, so you're totally out of the loop. Or you only have 3 of the things on the job description rather than 10, and so you shouldn't apply for this. Or this person's going to definitely say no to you, so you shouldn't even bother asking. All those things, you just throw them out the window. And I think you just tell yourself, I only live once, and if I don't do this, I think I would regret it. And you don't want to live with any regrets. So I mean, go for it.
So you power pose.
All the time. I am such a big power poser. Yeah. I am a very big power poser. And you can do it subtly. Like, you don't have to do the full superwoman pose, but even just standing there, like creating space. It's all about creating space. So like putting your hands on your hips and your feet firmly planted on the ground is a really good one. If ever you're in like a conversation or a meeting where you're standing up and you sort of need a boost, or you're dealing with a difficult conversation, or even when you're in a meeting, sitting and making sure your bottom is like really firmly planted in the seat and your shoulders are back and you've got your hands calmly resting on your legs and you can feel your feet planted on the ground. That also is, a power pose as well. It doesn't have to be that traditional, hands behind your head, feet up on the desk type thing. It's so powerful. I use them all the time. And mantras are the other thing that I swear by. Walking through rooms, saying, yeah, actually I can do this. I can do this.
Beautiful segue, because
but that is it. That is where it's come from. It is absolutely where it's come from. Telling yourself, visualizing that you can do something, telling yourself that you can do something. That's how athletes train. I don't see why that's not something that you could use in everyday life, and it absolutely helps.
And there's a lot of science about that if you actually really clearly visualize something, your brain can't tell the difference.
No, yeah. It's not quite like The Secret, but it's close.
That never worked for me. So
no.
So let's move on then to this wonderful story. You pivoted. Well, COVID arrived.
Yeah. Where did that come from? Oh my goodness. Yeah. Talk about carpet being pulled out of from underneath you for the whole of the world. Sheila I had my second child in December 2019, and Sheila was doing really well in 2019. And I just invested a whole lot more in inventory than we do normally, to prepare for a growth year in 2020. And we're really pumped about that. And we've done forecasting around it, and we've done trend analysis, and we're like, people are really wanting to get this sort of exclusive range, that there's only a limited pieces, and there's really beautiful statement out there leathers. And so that was all designed and curated and manufactured and paid for and shipped and arrived late January and early February. And COVID happened in March, and there was no, consumer confidence just dropped through the floor. The problem that my product was serving is essentially commuting, and so people weren't doing that. Like, as lovely as my customers are, buying handbags to transport things from the kitchen to the home office is not a necessity.
It's not become a thing yet.
No. And so, I mean, I have the most amazingly loyal customer base. But I really needed to think about what I was doing. Sales dropped by more than 40%. Freight and logistics and material and supply all increased by more than 30%. You know, I was at home with 2 little boys. We were staying in regional Victoria for that year because it was much easier having an outdoor area than in Carlton. I was in the very privileged position to be able to use a house that my parents weren't staying at. And my husband was commuting to Melbourne. And so I was sort of having 3 nights at home alone with the boys until I was very fortunate to have my mother there for, I think, 6 or 8 weeks of one of the lockdowns, which was an absolute godsend. But yeah, you know, I had a child who was really sick with reflux, and so there wasn't much sleep happening. I had postnatal depression as well because I was just juggling so much stuff, and I had this child that I couldn't console, and that was incredibly upsetting. I had a very active 3-year-old, and I had this business that was dying, and I was just so upset that so many other businesses were also suffering, and I wanted to do something, anything that could make some sort of difference, and it didn't matter how small it was. I needed to do something for me personally to feel better about the situation, and I posted a top. I'm a massive fan of slogan tops from like forever, and I purchased this superhero top actually with a friend in California while I was on the Women's Executive Leadership Training Program called Superhero, and another one that says no pain, no champagne. But I was wearing this, I put the superhero one on. I'd had a really terrible night with the boys. I was, you know, home alone in regional with like no one around, and said, you know, women are superheroes. We can do anything. You know, pep talk to myself on my personal Instagram, not the Sheline Instagram. And I had so many people identify with the messaging, like direct message me from the post, all like family and friends, obviously not a public thing. And they had said, gosh, you know, you should make a top that says walk fearlessly. That's your tagline. I mean, I would buy something like that. And then that's where it started. I thought, gosh, you know, something, because it hasn't been possible to manufacture the handbags here as much as I would have loved. I really tried to do that and explore it here, but to be able to produce something under $1,000 with that much leather at the construction sophistication and at that scale was just really too difficult. But a sweatshirt, I thought, if that's something that I could gather as many other small businesses as possible together and produce something with a slogan that is not necessarily anything to do with my brand, but more about this group of people coming together to do something that's positive, that's like feel good, that benefits all of them, and you know, that showcases the skills we have here in Australia. Like I am by no means the first person to produce something Australian made, but I think I'm representative of sort of the average person that doesn't know a whole lot about garment manufacturing and was completely shocked about the insight that I found, and then have become so incredibly passionate about shining a light on it. And then the aligned messaging obviously is that supporting local business is obviously so incredible. It's, you know, important. It's the lifeblood of our community. It's like the social fabric of our community. It's what makes our towns and suburbs have their unique feel. You know, it's those places that know you by name. It's your friends and your family businesses. And I think we all need to play a part in their survival. And the only way we can do that is if we come together, and actually we can. And that was the point. Yeah.
You've produced these gorgeous wind cheaters, and as soon as I saw, and we didn't know each other at this point, as soon as I saw the story, I purchased mine.
Thank you.
And I'll make sure that for people watching the interview, we'll make sure that they can access a link to go and see the video that was made about how you kind of produced them and all of the people that you pulled together to do that.
It's all about the people. Yeah. And I didn't really pull them all together. They all were so willing to come on board. And it was, again, that generosity of spirit. They were absolutely, I'm indebted to them. Yeah. They were absolutely picking me up. And just the time, giving their intel and their guidance and their skill on how best to pull this project together, because they were equally passionate about it being every element Australian, because that is actually quite unique. And I didn't realize that that was as unique as it was until doing that process. And I think it was absolutely a passion project that turned into something that's going to be a staple part of Sheline. And it was something that brought me a lot of joy in a time where I was finding everything really difficult, and having all these really positive conversations where I was learning new things, and having adult conversations that weren't with babies, not that my babies are beautiful, but and doing something that was business for good. And you know, if I was going to be killed, I was going to go out all flames and glory, and hopefully creating some awareness and picking up some other people, and giving them some marketing and PR, and hopefully some money as well, and ideally saving the business.
So congratulations, because I know it's been very successful. I did want to flag with you, and I flagged it before, that it was interesting to me because I did buy one straight away. But I did hear feedback from some people around, well, I'm not going to pay that for a wind sheeter. How do you respond to that?
I completely understand the comment, but I think that's why the campaign is so incredibly important, and that's why I was so it was absolutely critical that I made a professional video. Originally, I had gone around to all of the makers and videoed them on my phone, and I have all of this spectacular footage about their stories and how manufacturing was all in Australia 20, 30 years ago, and how so much of it has gone overseas when the world sort of opened up with the internet and everything became so accessible. And now how COVID is sort of bringing to the fore that we need to be less reliant on offshore, and we need to be able to be doing things here, and that actually we have these amazing artisans and skills here, but if we want to keep them here, we need to make some choices about that. And I think people have got used to being able to buy things for a certain amount, because they have not necessarily understanding that what's been involved in the process of them being created, and where they've been created, and how they've been created, and by whom they have been created. And I mean, I had no idea that so many hands touched a garment, and how many things were involved in something that I thought was relatively straightforward that isn't. I mean, I'm sure that if you spoke to anyone in the fashion industry, they would sort of laugh and be like, of course I understand that, and I know all of this, and yes, we've been talking about this for ages, but I think that's why it's even more important that I'm yelling it from the rooftop, because I am very representative of the person that doesn't know, that I think should. And if we don't, do something about it, we will lose the skills, and we'll lose the ability to be able to do it all here. And it is such an opportunity to create so many jobs, and to bring the wealth back here, and to support Australians. So essentially, in answer to that question, you just explain, I'm a small business. I don't have the buying power of a much bigger business. So I don't have the ability to negotiate margins at all like a really big business on quantity. I'm also buying premium, 100% Australian everything. And as part of that, Australian people are paid Australian fair work wages. And they all work in places that are ethically responsible and sustainable. And as part of that, you're benefiting so many people's jobs and roles and livelihoods. And in fact, it's a really reasonable price for the top. And, you should have a spring in your step, because you're supporting 22 businesses when you buy something from us, because each of those businesses is part of the supply chain and contributes to the end product.
And there's no doubt that was the element of the story that got me to buy it. It's very emotional.
I think it's the human part of owning a business, and I think that needs to be talked about more. I think that there's this weird thing about business has to be cutthroat, and it has to be really non-emotional and not and at arm's length, and rah rah rah. It's all very macho. I don't know, to me anyway. And I felt like there is so much more strength in revealing the human side and the struggle and the love and the connection and the magic of community, and how people come together and offer support and lift you up, and how all of these people are supporting all of the other people in the process. Like it's just this, everybody's supporting one another, was just so lovely. And it was something that needed to be shared, beyond the fact that it also needed to be shared so that people can understand what is involved and have more appreciation of manufacturing in Australia around garments anyway.
And how are you now? Just to check in with you.
Oh, I'm good. I just feel like we need to be more open about talking about that. There shouldn't be stigma around it. I mean, I think we should talk about, we should be open to talking about miscarriages, and we should be open to be talking about depression, and we should be open to be talking about postnatal, because it's hard. All of those things. I think there needs to be more conversations around hard things and more real talk, so that people can actually grow and, feel and understand that it's okay if they've experienced that too, and not feel like they're alone. It's like going to one of those, career things, and you have this insanely amazing woman stand up and they say, I've achieved all of this, and you're like, gosh, I really want to do that. And they don't tell you about any of the hard stuff. I feel like we need to share the hard stuff, because I think it's the hard stuff that normalizes the fact that it is hard work to get there, and it doesn't just happen. And so, it's about guts and determination most of the time, unfortunately. And people need to normalize that. And I think that's the only way we're going to change the mindset of big business as well, around how they can better support women, because it is hard. It's not, I just got here and it was, obviously they've got there because they've worked tooth and nail to get there, and people need to understand that it shouldn't be like that, because it's not necessarily the same journey for men.
Kate, the final question that I ask everybody is, from your perspective, what does brave feminine leadership look like, and does it need to change?
Does it need to change? I don't know. Brave feminine leadership is like my mother in a nutshell. She is brave and strongly feminine and an amazing leader. And I feel like, she encapsulates that statement absolutely. I think there are a lot of really brave feminine leaders that we have currently in our world, but we need more. And I think the only way we can get that is if everybody talks about it more, and there's a lot more open, honest, uncomfortable conversations around it. I think absolutely, like the One Roof conference recently, there needs to be a lot more conversations that are about the unspoken, but they need to not just be with women, they need to be with men in the room, and they need to be with men coming with an ear open as well. And I think, there needs to be a stronger focus on soft skills and empathy, and I think soft skills it needs to be lifted up again. I think sharp skills or technical skills are very important, but I think leaders need really highly developed soft skills. And I think women quite intuitively seem to have that in spades, and we need more of that.
Kate, thank you so much for being so generous with your time and with joining the conversation.
No, it's the other way around. Thank you so much for having me.
Fantastic to have you here. So thank you so much.
Thank you.